The three characters, Jasmine, NADHIRAH and NAFISA, are seated in a study room with books of Islamic jurisprudence spread across a table. They are having a friendly yet serious discussion about the need for mazhabs in Islam.
Hey Jasmine, why are you so late?
I'm sorry guys, I come a bit late. I fell asleep earlier. You know what? Last night concert was so high.
Astaghfirullah, Jasmine. Ish. It's okay. The important thing is we are here now. So come discuss with us.
Thank you guys. So what are we gonna discuss today?
Okay, so we are here to discuss an important question today. Why do we need four mazhabs? Isn't it the Quran sufficient by itself for all times, place and people? This is something I hear often, but I think it's a misunderstanding of the relationship between Quran, the Prophet's teaching, and the role of the mazhabs.
Yes, and honestly, I think it's a valid question, The Quran is the word of Allah. It's universal, complete and clear. Why complicate things with four different schools of thought? Why can't we just follow the Quran directly without all these extra layers of interpretation?
That's a fair question. But let's first ask, how did the Quran come to us? The Quran was not sent down as a complete book directly to everyone. It was revealed over 23 years and it was the Prophet Muhammad who explained it, demonstrated it and lived by it. The companions, they memorized the Quran, never interpreted it on their own. They always turned to the Prophet for guidance.
Exactly, the companions, despite their deep understanding of Arabic, they still relied on the Prophet's explanation. So, when we talk about the mazhab, we're really talking about system that help us understand the Prophet's teaching in line with the Quran. It's not separate from the Quran, but a way to preserve and apply the teaching practically.
But wasn't that only necessary during the Prophet time because he was the living guide? Now that we have the Quran in written form, can we just rely on it? Why the need for different interpretation? Doesn't this create division? Why do we need four mazhab and not just one unified understanding?
That's a great point. But the reality is, human understanding is limited and context changes. The Quran gives us guidance, but not always in a step-by-step detail we might need for every scenario. For example, the Quran mentions 3 time periods for prayer, but the Prophet demonstrated 5 specific prayers. Without his practice, we might interpret that incorrectly. The mazhabs help us bridge that gap between the text and how to apply it in daily life.
Yes, and difference between the mazhab and that contradiction. There are different perspectives on the same truth. The Prophet himself performed certain acts in multiple ways, like how he placed his hand during prayer. The mazhab imams were not inventing new rulers. They were preserving the diversity of the Prophet's action and interpreting them for their communities.
Alright, but why do we need 4? Couldn't one school have been enough? Does it having multiple schools just cause confusion and division?
Not at all. Think of the mazhabs like lanes on the highway. They are all heading in the same direction, leading to Allah's pleasure, but different communities, cultures and circumstances might make one path more suitable than another. Imam Abu Hanifa, for example, deal with urban communities, while Imam Malik's school grew in a region where the culture and practices were different. Both schools are based on the Quran and Sunnah but apply slightly differently.
Exactly. In fact, the diversity within the mazhab is a mercy. The Prophet ﷺ said that difference among scholars are blessing for the ummah. This allows flexibility within the framework of Islam, and is why the four mazhabs survived. They were robust enough to handle various situations, but all grounded in the same core principle.
But we're living in a modern world now, with so much access to information. Why do we still need to rely on these centuries-old schools of thought? Can we interpret the Quran directly, given how much knowledge we have now?
The thing is, interpreting the Quran and Sunnah is not just about having access to information. It requires deep scholarship, understanding of context, and a level of spiritual insight that few people today possess. The mazhab imams dedicated their entire lives to this. They were not just scholars in the academic sense. They were inheritors of the Prophet legacy. They had both the knowledge and the wisdom to guide people through complex issues.
And remember, the scholars of the mazhab were closer to the time of the Prophet and his companions. They had direct access to the teaching, culture and tradition of that era. Modern interpretation without their guidance risks misunderstanding the Quran in turn. That's why scholars today still rely on the framework of the mazhabs. This way to stay connected to the authentic tradition while applying it to the contemporary issue.
I see what you're saying. So the mazhab aren't there to divide us, but to provide us with a structured way of following Islam based on different contexts and interpretation of the same core truth. But still, it seems a lot of people are confused by the difference.
That's understandable, but the key is to remember that all four mazhabs are leading to the same place. They are not conflict, and their differences are minor compared to the bigger picture. Our shared belief in Allah, the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet. They give us flexibility while keeping us on the straight path.
And that flexibility is a blessing. It ensures that Islam can be practiced in different times, place and circumstances without losing its essence. We just need to approach it with the understanding that the mazhabs are a means of preserving and applying the Prophet's legacy, not creating division.
Alright, I think I'm starting to see the wisdom in it. It's not about rejecting the Quran or creating unnecessary complexity. It's about following a guided path that helps us apply the Quran and Sunnah correctly in a way that fits our circumstance.
Exactly. The mazhabs are like a map guiding us safely to our destination, and the beauty is that all four paths are valid and blessed.
Well said, the mazhab keep us united in our diversity.
So now the point is, we have to learn about four mazhab because the Quran was not sent down as a complete book directly to everyone. Other than that, the Quran gives us guidance but not always in step-by-step detail we might need for every scenario. Next, we don't have to worry about learning for these four mazhab because all these four mazhab are heading in the same direction, leading to Allah's pleasure. Next, we also don't need to worry about learning these four mazhab because the mazhab imam had both knowledge and wisdom to guide people through complex issues. So we can go through on them to something problem that new for us. And lastly, we must learn these four mazhab because they give us flexibility while keeping us on the straight path.
Next, I want to explain the next point. The first point is the mazhab help understand and apply the Prophet's teaching in line with the Quran. It's not separate from the Quran, but a way to preserve and apply the teachings practically. The second point is difference between mazhab are perspective on the same truth, but not contradiction. Third point is diversity within the mazhab is a mercy, allowing flexibility in Islamic practice. This is because the Prophet ﷺ said that difference among scholars are a blessing for the Ummah. Fourth point is scholars of the mazhab were closer to the Prophet's time, preserving authentic traditions. And the last point is the mazhab maintain unity with allowing Islam to adapt to different contexts without losing its essence.
Based on an opinion of critic, Quran is the word of Allah. It's universal, complete and clear. We just need one unified understanding. Like we all know, the Prophet teachings, or we call it hadith, are complete enough to give an explanation and guidance for Muslims. The Prophet Muhammad was the living guide. Next, having multiple schools will just cause confusion and division. We also don't need to rely on these centuries-old schools of thought, since we have the internet to get information from it. Lastly, a lot of people will confused by the difference of four mazhab.